Hello and happy Memorial Day, everybody. This is the Bikes or Death podcast. My name is Patrick, and I'm your host. This is the podcast that talks about bikepacking, adventuring, and the cool people who participate. Got a special guest for y'all today. Lael Wilcox is on the show. She and I just happened to be in Northwest Arkansas at the exact same time. I was up there on a family vacation, and she was there for work, and I saw on Instagram that she was in the area. I sent her a message on Instagram, and she was gracious enough to say yes, and in short order, we were sitting down at a table and having an interview. I'm still kind of in shock that it happened. Whenever I started the podcast, my ultimate dream or goal was to one day be able to interview her. And so being able to interview her at episode 10 is crazy. It's awesome. The truth is I probably would have been happy to interview her at podcast number 100 whenever I'd gotten better at interviewing and all that. But, it doesn't matter. Like, I had the opportunity and I took it. And it was great. And so, like, whenever I was editing this episode, I thought about, like, editing down and making it super polished. But the truth of it is that I'm still learning how to be a podcaster, and I'm trying to get better. And I don't mind, I guess, kind of taking y'all along the journey and kind of seeing some of the stupid things that I say or whatever, So I kind of left the audio raw, and that's kind of my style in general. But I am actively working at getting better. Yeah, I appreciate all the comments and the critiques that I get. You can always reach out to me either on Instagram or just send me an email, bikes@bikesfordeath.com. And I love to hear from y'all. And any suggestions you have on ways I can improve the show, I'm all ears. I want to get better. So for this episode, like I said, I left it kind of raw. I think part of it just like showed her personality and how like down to earth she was. And so like the podcast actually starts, we were just talking as I was getting the equipment set up, and I hit record, and that's the moment that this interview will start. And so we're kind of halfway through a conversation, but she's kind of giving me a little jab there. And it just shows her personality a little bit. So it kind of, it's not a smooth intro into the episode, but I liked it, so I left it in. Anyway, all right, I won't talk too much more about the interview itself. But before we get to it, just wanted to let everybody know that I've set up some new tiers over at Patreon. We just got in Bikes or Death patches. So if you go over to Patreon, those are now available. Either you can contribute for $1 and it's a few stickers. $5 contribution is a patch and a sticker, and a $10 contribution is 2 patches and 2 stickers. So if you want to get in on that, head over to Patreon, and all of that just goes to support the show. Okay, and one last thing before we get to it. Please stick around after the show, because I have an idea for a project that I could use some of y'all's help on. But I'm going to let the episode roll, and then I'll talk to you about it once the episode is over. But please stick around to hear about that, because I got an idea and I think it could be kind of neat. So, all right, that's it. Let's get to the show.
Oh, yeah, it's a huge state.
Well, yeah, I noticed.
I mean, Alaska's bigger.
Yeah, you had to throw that out there. Good, you got that in.
Yeah. But yeah.
Have you lived in Alaska your whole life?
I grew up there. So I went through high school there and then moved out of state for college. And then, now I go back for like 6 weeks or so.
Cool. All right. Well, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. This is crazy. Okay, so I'm literally sitting down across the table from Lael Wilcox. I'm going to get your name right. I'm sitting across the table from Lael Wilcox. I'm absolutely freaking out right now. This is... So I decided what I'm going to do is I'm going to be like a super fan for like 1 minute, and then I'm going to like get that out of the way so then I can be a podcaster for the rest of the time, hopefully. Yeah. This is like a big deal for me. Whenever I started the podcast, my big goal was to interview you.
No way.
I mean, I swear, like that was like, how anytime you do anything, you're like, all right, what's my big goal? What's that like one thing that you're going to put out there that if you can achieve that, I don't know what it means, but that's what you're going for. And the reason why is because I'm a genuine fan of yours. I mean,
that's really cool.
Watching what you've been able to accomplish is inspirational. It's something that has helped me to go and do things that I may not have been able to do or didn't think I'd be able to do, and put myself in hard situations and keep pushing. And it's because of not just you, but you are one of the big people that I can look up to in the sport and say like, wow, look at what Lael did,
Uh-huh.
And the other side of that is it's not just like what you've accomplished, but I feel like it's the attitude at which you go through these events and the things that you choose to tackle. You're always smiling. You have a positive attitude, and you're happy to be on your bike, and right?
Yeah.
Is that true?
It's totally true.
Yeah.
I'm just so excited to be out there, and I feel like so lucky that I get to keep choosing what I'm doing. It's like the next thing, and then I don't know what's coming up, and 2 months before I make a plan and then kind of make it more complicated by figuring out a ride there or some creative way to approach it, and then that keeps it like really alive for me.
Yeah.
I'm just pumped to be doing it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I get to make this connection, or the people I meet along the way, kind of like linking up all the dots. It's just like that's a lot of the fun for me, that it's not so straightforward. You never kind of know what's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you so much for being an inspiration. I'd be remiss if I didn't throw that out there and genuinely thank you from me to you. And I'm sure I echo the sentiments of a lot of people who are listening. Thank you for being out there, and I know you're having fun and you're enjoying it, but you're also inspiring a lot of people along the way. So thank you.
Well, thanks a lot. I mean, it's cool we're doing this.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's very cool for me. Yeah, so we're actually sitting here in Bentonville today in a backyard. Just a little while ago, we had a rap concert going on, but you might also hear some birds and stuff.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful day. So let's start there. Like, why are you in Bentonville?
Yeah, so I came here actually. The Women from Hope has a really strong women's program, and then they got connected with the organizer of the Women Shred Festival, which is part of the Bentonville Film Festival this year. And they just asked, hey, do you want to come to this festival with us, and we'll show the movie that Rue made last year, I'm Not Stopping, and you could do a Q&A and kind of group rides. And I was like, heck yeah, I'd love to go. I'd never come to Arkansas otherwise. So we decided on this, I think, in January or so, and then just kind of marked off the dates, and here we are.
Yeah.
And I love it. I mean, I'm just like, whoa, I just want to come back to Arkansas. It's so beautiful. So many trails. Now there's this new 1,200-mile gravel route, and I just feel like there's a lot more to do here. So
yeah, there's
pretty
a lot
cool to
going
get
on.
Like a little exposure to it.
Yeah, they have so much going on. It's overwhelming. You said earlier it's like Disneyland for cyclists.
It is. Yeah, totally. The trails are anyway. It's like all these rocks are perfectly placed, and then you do little stream crossings, and it's just a lot of fun. I don't think anybody could have a bad time out there. It's super flowy, and just like you're just smiling the whole time.
That's that Walmart money.
Yeah, it is. It's huge. But it's really cool to kind of see that happen out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I talked to this guy, Gary Verner.
Yes.
And he's Vernon, something like that. And he's like, I think responsible for a lot of this trail building.
Right.
And he said, in 2003 or 2004, there were zero trails. Mm-hmm. It's like 15 years later, it's like a kind of a mecca.
Yeah, it's amazing. They're really using this to like showcase what's possible whenever the city, the state, and local even companies get involved and produce infrastructure, and the entire state has benefited from what they've done. I mean,
totally.
Residency is going up and all kinds of.
I mean, I must have met at least like half a dozen people that individually told me they just moved here because they thought it was such a nice place, like from all over the country. I'm like, whoa, people are moving here.
Yeah. Yeah,
so cool.
I'm one of them.
Yeah.
My wife and I we got our land, and we're headed here as soon as we can. So
super cool.
So let's talk a little bit more about the film.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you call it I'm Not Stopping?
It's actually funny. I didn't name it.
Okay.
And then I wrote an article for the Radavist, and he titled the article "I'm Not Stopping" for my story, because in my story was a big part. A couple guys came and found me, with my spot tracker, and they were saying stuff like, "Hey, will you pull over here so we can take a selfie?" And I was like, "No, I'm not going to pull over. I'm not stopping." And it was just like this kind of recurring sentiment, and I was like, I'm not stopping. I'm going to keep going, and that was what was kind of driving me. I'm like, I'm not getting off my bike. I was only sleeping like 2.5 hours a night and just moving forward. So I guess John Watson from the Radavist kind of named it for us.
Oh, cool. That reminds me of another story I remember about you from the 2016 Trans Am, when your competitor, I think, asked you if you wanted to like ride in together.
Oh yeah.
And you said, "This is a race."
Yeah, it's so good. I mean, you put so much work into being there, and you sacrifice so much. Like the Trans Am, that at that point it was 17 days in of like very little sleep. I was cutting even more sleep towards the end trying to catch this guy. Then I finally do, and then he's like, "Hey, let's finish it together. We've been battling for 2 weeks." And I'm like, No,
bro.
I was like, "We're going." And then I just started sprinting like as hard as I could.
Fired up.
For like the next 25 miles. I was like, I felt like my chest was going to explode. I was riding so hard, but I was also so excited. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I actually have legs right now. It was like, I think the excitement just like kind of triggered something, and I just went for it.
Yeah. You were still in the race mentality. You were like, I'm going to knock this thing out. And I think you answered it. It's like, okay, everything you did up to there, like you worked so hard to get to where he was, and then you're like, no, I'm not just going to stop and like wait for you. And,
yeah. I mean, in this race, like I had, especially like the first week of it, quite a bit of frustration, because I was like, I'd never really ridden road. And I was like, it's going to be a piece of cake. It's so easy. We're on the road. And then I really didn't have like road riding technique. I had never ridden so many flats, like flat terrain. I was like, this is miserable. It's just so hard. You really have to like push a big ring just to get the speed you need to cover the distance. And I was like, I just don't have that. I'm a climber.
Right.
So I had to like learn whole new technique while I was out there. And I was like, yeah, I was riding with a friend, Evan, and he was like, well, don't give yourself such a hard time. You could come back like next year or a few years later, and you'll probably get good at this, like eventually. And I was like, I turned to him, I was like, I gotta do it now.
Yeah,
I'm like, I'm not coming back later. Like I have to figure this out.
What mileage in was he saying that to you?
Probably like closer to like 1,000 miles in,
so
and the full thing's like 4,200. Because I was like, Evan, do you have any like, advice? Because I feel like I'm just blowing it. Because we were like, at that point, the leaders were like 150 miles ahead of us. And I was like, oh my God, I was just kind of like depressed.
Oh man. So how'd you bounce back from that? Was it just a matter of teaching yourself how to ride on the road, or?
Kind of. A big part of that was I was sleeping like 5 hours a night at that point, and the leaders were sleeping like 1. So they had like another 4 hours of riding a day.
Right.
And then, and then the terrain got a lot tougher in the east. Like super steep, super like just rollers, just kind of crushing terrain. And that's when I started doing really well. So I was like, I can do this climbing, like I can do this tough terrain. And then, so I was gaining on people there because I had that kind of ability to ride that terrain.
Cool.
But the flats were just going to,
they were going to kill you.
Kill me. This is so,
That's neat. All right. Well, going back to I'm Not Stopping, that's actually, why don't we talk about that route a little bit? Because there was a ton of climbing in that. What was that like?
Totally. So it's a route in Switzerland. It does kind of a circle from German Switzerland to the French side. And it's 1,000 kilometers and 100,000 feet of climbing.
Holy shit.
Yeah, so then I ended up climbing like almost 25,000 feet a day. It was
I don't even know what that,
so
I can't imagine.
Insane.
Yeah.
That's just like incredible. Every single day, day after day. You know? And it is just steep up and steep down because there's no other way you can fit that much climbing into that distance. So it's just so steep. My gearing for that bike was like I think a 30-tooth chainring with 10 to 50. And I was in that easiest gear often.
Yeah.
Like just grinding it out. Like
I can't
going
believe
like
you didn't have a bigger range.
3 miles an hour.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and then I was like, oh, maybe next year I'd get a 28, you know?
Yeah.
I was like, might have been better.
Yeah.
But I wasn't, I was mostly on my bike, just pedaling. Like sometimes Rue was there documenting and she'd be like basically speed walking faster than I was riding. I was like, oh, this is pathetic.
Right.
You know, this is just such a grind.
How
at
much of it
times.
was riding and how much of it was pushing?
Mostly riding.
Really?
Almost all.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
there were like a few stretches of pushing, but it was never for long. Like never more than like half a kilometer of
Yeah.
pushing, which is pretty cool. You know,
Yeah.
considering how steep it was. So, and often like you'd have like a paved climb and then a like a trail descent, like the way it was routed,
Mhm.
which was pretty sweet.
Yeah, that's awesome.
yeah.
So from the film, what was your personal favorite part of that film?
I really like the guy I was racing, Stefan Stransky.
Mhm.
He's just such a goofball, like such a funny guy.
Yeah.
That I liked how Rue like kind of showed his personality, because we would ride like during the race we rode together in the night, I think for 2 hours one of the nights, and we're just talking, and he was just so funny, like the things he was doing. I was like, this guy is just way out there. I mean, he wasn't really, this is kind of against like self-supported, but he wasn't really carrying anything.
Right.
So he'd be like yelling, he'd be like, hey, to an old farmer guy, he's like, hey, do you have any chain lube? You know, or like probably just using like motor oil. I don't even know. But
Yeah.
and he's a Czech guy, you know, and then he's in Switzerland. He hardly speaks English. These people don't really speak English. Like their communication must have been so funny.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the end whenever he made it to Freddie Mercury and he's like, I had to get the cheese. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah. He like
You want some cheese?
bought all this farm stuff.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, great attitude. Him too, you know.
Oh my gosh, he's great. And we'll all be racing him again in Kyrgyzstan this year.
Oh, cool.
So that'd be super cool.
What is that event?
It's a Silk Road mountain race.
Oh, right. Okay.
So I think like 1,000 miles, a lot of climbing there too, and then almost no resources.
Right.
So that should be really cool.
So my favorite part of the film was when you were cresting that mountain and you
Ugh.
were pushing your bike, and you could tell how steep it was by how you were having to like engage the brake and then like pull yourself up by your bike. And I think if you've done this kind of stuff, you've probably been there before. You're just like, oh, you know. But what you said was what was really neat, and you probably remember how you were like just stoked to be there. You were like, man, to like be here at this time of day in this weather and to see this. I just loved your perspective in that moment, you know?
It's incredible though. It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's like comes down to, you know, these races happen all over the world, but then it really comes down to how good the route is. Because it's like I've also done some races where the route was not that great, and then you're like you're in a lot of pain, and then you're in kind of just like a swamp, and you're like, why am I here?
Right.
But it always becomes kind of like, it's always kind of funny too, because you're like, what am I doing here? Like pushing through a swamp in the middle of the night. Like,
Yeah.
But then I still want to be there, you know, because you never know what's next either.
That's true. So what pushes you on those rides? I mean, what keeps you motivated to keep getting up every morning and go out there and pound
Oh,
the pedals?
man. I really just want to do my best. And then I'm like, if I did it, then I would know. I'd be like, oh, I like slept an extra hour here, or, you know, I would know. And then I would be like disappointed in that, you know. So I'm like driven. And most of the time I wake up and I actually do want to go. I'm like, okay, I'm ready to go. I'm
Yeah.
not like, oh. I mean, the first like hour will be kind of like warming up. But then once you're moving, it's fine.
Right.
You know? And then, yeah, it's just like the terrain you get to cover in a single day is incredible.
Yeah, how much inspiration do you draw from the different sights or sounds or views that
It's
you experience?
huge. I mean, the thing for me is it's also feels like low pressure for that, because it's like I can just be in my own head thinking, and then I look out, see this beautiful view, and I'm like, wow, have like this moment of like, this is amazing, and then just go back to like whatever I'm thinking about. I
Right.
don't feel like I have to focus that hard, you know, or like it doesn't have to be like the best moment of my life, but I still get to experience it.
Right.
You know, and that's kind of, in a way, can be like a mental break from touring, when you feel like you have to make all the right decisions. Like, oh, we should camp in a nice place, or should we go to this town or not? Like, you're constantly like weighing your options. When you're racing, you're like, I just have to keep moving forward. Who cares?
Oh, keep it simple. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you try to like balance you're obviously very competitive. probably mostly against yourself, maybe. Like you were talking about how you don't want to get to the end of a race and have like regrets where you left like an extra hour's sleep or whatever. So it sounds like you try to balance that competitive with also trying to appreciate the moments as they come in the ride.
Oh yeah, and then even with your like competitors, you feel like generally feel more like friends with them. Like you're excited to see them.
Right.
You have so much in common. You're experiencing the same thing that it doesn't feel like you have any animosity towards them. You're more like, wow.
Yeah.
Like Stefan during Navad would be like, tell me some weird thing that happened to you today.
Right.
And like, so we just kind of like talk over the day, or, it wasn't like this fierce, like, I'm going to beat you.
Right.
But then you do want to catch him and like drop him. It's like, it's both, but it's like friendly competition.
Yeah. I totally get that. I did a 500. Do you know Hal Russell?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so I
cool guy.
Yeah.
Also, big smiler.
Oh, big smile. Yeah, one of my heroes, big
he's
time.
The best.
Yeah. So he and I did a 500-mile self-supported gravel event in Texas.
Oh, okay, cool.
And I wound up racing against him quite a bit, and it was a lot of fun. I was trying to beat him, he was trying to beat me, but we're having a good time. We're chatting each other up and talking about the race, and he got me on night 3. I was like, "Hey, Hal, how you doing?" And I was passing him. He's like, "Oh, I'm doing pretty good. I think I'm gonna settle down and sleep here pretty soon." And so I did another, 50 miles. I was like, "All right, I think I'm gonna sleep." Yeah. And then while I was sleeping, he never slept. He just kept going. I was like, "You old dog."
He just told you his story. That's so good.
Yeah, I love it though. I mean, yeah, I learned. I don't know. I mean, I don't think I think he probably maybe was really gonna stop and sleep, and then he just decided to keep going. But it's just, it's a fun game, and it keeps you like motivated and in the moment to like have somebody to kind of like, race against. Oh, that guy's catching me, or that girl's catching me. I need to go faster, or whatever. I mean, it's just you're out there for a long time.
Totally.
Like you need to.
Yeah, and
have
that's
some
like
motivation.
A big thing, it's like I've done these events too where I just am solo, and it's so much easier if you're part of a race to stay like motivated, or to feel like I'm not the only one experiencing this. Like if it's terrible weather or whatever, you're like, oh, you have like this camaraderie. And then when you're by yourself and it's only you against the clock, you're like, ugh.
Yeah, that's rough.
It can be so like
that clock isn't going to sleep either.
No,
it's just going to
it's
keep
just
on
gonna
ticking.
Keep going. And then you think about conditions other people had setting these records, and they were like great conditions, and you're like into an extreme headwind. And you're like, oh no,
this isn't right. I get a redo.
Yeah.
All right, so I want to go back to the very beginning. No.
Yeah.
But I feel like, okay, you're the only guest I've ever had on the show that has a Wikipedia page.
And it's really wrong.
Okay, yeah. But
it's just so bad. It's like really false.
We need to work on that. But you do have a Wikipedia page, regardless of how. But I mean, a lot of people are familiar with you and what you've done in the sport. Especially with my listeners, they'll be very familiar with you. Yeah, take us back a little bit, like before everybody knew Lael Wilcox, and how you got into cycling and then bike packing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was not a cyclist growing up, like at all. I didn't even like bikes. I really only started riding. No, it's true. I started riding in college just to get to and from work. And I was like, okay, this is cool because it's faster than walking, because I've never driven a car either. So a bike became like this super vehicle for me just to like get around. I was like, wow, that opens up my world. Walking across town takes like all day.
Yeah.
Which I like too. It's just different.
Right.
When you have like a time crunch, you got to get there. So I started riding to work, and then I was living in Tacoma, Washington, going to college at the time. And my sister was living in Seattle. So I was going to go visit her, and then I was super broke. I didn't even have like money for the bus. Like it's like $2.50. I didn't even have that. So I was like, well, what if we just rode there? I was with my boyfriend at the time, Nick, and so we this was in like 2000, probably like 2006. And we like printed off directions from MapQuest, I think, for a bike route from Tacoma to Seattle, and then just rode there. We had like fixed gear bikes, and I'd never ridden that far in my life. It was like 45 miles, and I was like, whoa, we're on this ride. And mid-ride, I was like, man, if we could ride to Seattle, we could ride across the country. And I was like, this is huge. Because
That's not a normal progression, by the way.
Yeah, but I'd never even heard of bike touring, you know.
Right.
It was like, I didn't even know anybody did that. So then I was like, well, I'm graduating this year, and we can set off just after that. But we still didn't have any money, so we went and worked for the summer, saved some money, and then ended up, the first trip was just down the East Coast from, I think we went Boston up to Montreal and then down to Key West, Florida.
Yeah. Would you do anything for money while you were riding?
Not then.
Not then?
Not ever, really.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of hard to do. I guess you could write articles, you know, that kind of thing. But seasonal work, what we would do is like just get somewhere and then stay for like 3 months and work. So I guess that kind of counts. It was like we got to Key West, and then that was the end of the road. We got jobs as pedicab drivers, you know, like bicycle taxi.
Yeah.
I also worked at a restaurant. It was like the holiday season, and it's like the tropics. For me, I was like, wow, this is incredible. They're like decorating palm trees and stuff for Christmas.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and then so saved money and then took off to ride across the South. And so I guess there was always a plan for a next trip.
Gotcha.
Like you'd stay like 3 to 6 months in one spot and then start riding somewhere else. And then that way I got to like kind of live around the country, working at different restaurants, kind of learning different places,
Can't
making
imagine.
friends.
Yeah. What a great experience.
So that was cool.
What was motivating you at that time in your life? Was it the bike travel, or was it all the different places or the people?
I think it was more the places, just like connecting these places, because even then I would didn't even like riding. It was like I was a runner, so I loved to run, and then I'd get on this bike and I'm like, oh, like I don't really want this bike with all this stuff on it. Like I felt kind of like trapped on the bike, which is so odd. Because now like the bike is, I feel so free on the bike. It's like I had to switch mentalities.
Yeah, I get it though from running, which is super simplistic. You know, I mean, there's nothing. You might have water on you or some gels. Or
you just go.
I'm not a runner, but I know you don't have much stuff with cycling. If you're going to do what you're doing, you have to carry some stuff, some food, some water, some shelter. Then you got this big ass bike you got to lug around too. And so I get it. So at what point did you kind of start to really maybe fall in love with the cycling aspect of it?
I mean, really, I was injured. This was 2014. I had an Achilles injury, so I couldn't run. And it was like driving me crazy. I was like, all I want to do is run, but I can't because of my ankle. And so I started riding long distance. And I was borrowing my mom's bike at the time. She had like a kind of a mid-level road bike. And I was like, okay, I'm in Anchorage. I was working, and then I have the weekend. So I'd be like, over the weekend, I'm going to ride to Homer, and it's like 224 miles. And so I would cover these great distances, like not sleeping much, just on my own. It wasn't a race. And I was like, I started obsessing about these long rides. And that was like the start of like really appreciating the bike, and then also like realizing I could cover like massive distances, and it wasn't that big of a deal.
Yeah.
The end of that summer, I did a 400-mile road race. And I didn't even know if I could finish it. There's like a cutoff time of 32 hours, and I was like, well, I actually don't know if I can finish this. And then while I was riding, I like started picking up speed. I ended up like getting second overall in the race, and the guy who beat me was on a recumbent. And he beat me by like 12 minutes.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah, and I finished, and I was like, wow, that wasn't so bad. You know, I wasn't even that tired. I was like, I mean, I'm tired, but I'm fine. And I was like, 400 miles, I think my time was like 27 hours. I was like, you can even finish that distance in that time? I didn't realize it was possible. So that was pretty cool.
That's something I hear you say a lot. I'm not even tired.
Yeah.
What the heck, dude? Like, how are you?
I don't know.
How?
I mean, I think I just like don't get tired very easily. And then I'm
Are you
like,
talking about physically, mentally, everything?
both.
You're just,
Yeah,
you're just like clicked on, and
I'm like, I'm fine.
I'm fine.
Or like I sleep for a few hours and then I just pop awake and I'm like, I'm ready to go. You know, it's just like something, I think I'm so excited to be out there, you know, part of this. But then I'm also just like kind of, I don't know, I've always been like a kind of a morning person, like just ready to go, you know, excited to just get outside.
Can't sit still. Just
yeah,
gotta keep
I always
going.
have to move, you know, so I guess it works for this kind of sport.
It works. I mean, you know, the mental side is huge. And so it seems like, I mean, just naturally, maybe you kind of have the mental side licked, and then you have some, obviously, physical fitness.
Yeah, I mean, I've been even thinking more about that like the mental side, because I just have kind of taken it by like, oh, this is what I do. But I've realized even more and more, the more positive you can stay, the better you're going to do. So it's like now I'm trying to just, while I'm riding, just keep my head in a good place. And I started using like music for this. Like if I feel really bad, then I'm like, all right, just listen to music for like an hour, like basically pop.
Yeah.
And then it'll
Happy
just bring
music.
you out of it. You're like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm fine.
Yeah.
Or like staying up through the night, because it's hard to stay awake. I used to like sing to myself, but now I've been listening to Harry Potter, and it'll keep you up all night. You just like want to know what's going to happen.
That's great. I was actually going to ask you what you listen to on the on your rides. Yeah, music is. I listen to podcasts, books. I listen to it all. We're actually reading Harry Potter with my daughter right now.
So good.
How far
So
into
good.
it are you?
Oh man, I'm on the last book.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I listened to it for the Arizona Trail.
Uh-huh.
I didn't sleep for 2 days, like
Wow.
at all.
Yeah.
But it would really keep me up, you know. It's
I
like
get that.
I was listening. I'm riding this like pretty technical trail, listening to Harry Potter in the dark. It's like, this is so weird.
I can relate. I've done some races, and I listen to music, and I should say this was a time trial, so it wasn't like I was shoulder to shoulder with people.
Yeah.
But they're like, "What were you listening to?" I'm like, "Oh, podcast." They're like, "You're like going max heart rate and listen to podcasts," and I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know. I think it just kind of relaxes me, you know. Like, I mean, you need to be intense, but mentally, you kind of want to be relaxed.
Yeah.
At least I do, you know. And so I'm
yeah.
trying to just stay calm in my brain, but then also push myself. And yeah, I find that helps. Singing helps. Smiling.
Yeah.
There's like studies that if you just like smile, if you're just like, and I will definitely do that. I'm like, things are hard, you wake up first thing in the morning and everything hurts, and you know you got that first like 30 minutes to like an hour break-in period where you got to like tell your body like, okay, yeah, we really are doing this. I'll just try to smile, you know, real big, and just be happy, you know.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think that's important for people to hear that. Just appreciate the moment you're in and be happy.
And it's going to be hard, you know. You're going to experience pain, but it's not that big of a deal. Also, not getting emotional about it, like not being so upset that you're in pain. It's like, it'll pass. I think sometimes I think like, I even like look at the clock and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to check again in 30 minutes and see like at that time if I feel any better. And usually you do. Like you feel horrible, and then 30 minutes later you're like, oh, I'm fine.
That's something I've noticed too. It's weird, right? So you have these preconceived ideas of what you can and cannot do. And then you go and you smash through whatever it is, and then you're like, okay, well, I thought I couldn't do that. Now I know I can. What else can I do that I didn't think I could?
And the other thing is your body actually gets used to it.
Right.
Like you give yourself like the first long ride I did, 224 miles, like my legs like swelled up like crazy afterward. That never happened again. It was like your body goes through shock, and then the next time you do it, your body's like, oh, that's fine.
Been there.
I did that.
Yeah.
You know, no problem. So it's like, I think the same with the sleep deprivation. It's like now it's not as big of a deal.
Oh, wow. Can you talk about that a little bit?
It's not. I think it's probably the most unhealthy thing you can do for yourself.
Right.
But it actually does get easier. You're like not craving sleep as much as you used to. Like this race in Switzerland, I slept like 9.5 hours the whole race, 4.5 days. And I wasn't expecting to do that. I thought I would sleep like 4 or 5 hours a night, and then I just kept waking up, and I'm like, okay, I'm ready to go. And I was like,
you're just training your body.
That bad.
Your mind
I wasn't
and your
like
body.
forcing myself to do it. I was just kind of doing it.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's one thing I really love about this sport. How it pushes you, and you get to find out more things about yourself, that you're capable of more than you thought you were. You know, we're really way more capable than we give ourselves credit for a lot of the time.
And I'll use like every modern convenience I can. You know,
yeah,
it's like,
exactly.
I'm only buying food at the gas station because it's faster.
Right.
You know, like all this crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Like I'll use the resources as much as I can, you know, which is part of the kind of the game of it. You're like, how can I actually do this faster?
Well, we're fortunate to be in a position where you get to push yourself. I mean, you choose. That's a choice you make. You're going to choose to put yourself in some hard positions.
But you don't have to.
It's a luxury.
Like forced there.
Yeah. But there's something I enjoy about that, making that connection with kind of like opening up your eyes and your mind to what human beings are capable of, and realize like there's levels out there.
And you also learn so much more about the natural world. like if you're out there all night, like you see so many more animals.
Yes.
And you like, you're in the dark, but you feel like any bodies of water close to you because it's cold. Like you can't even see them, but you feel them. You start feeling like all this stuff around you.
Smell
you can
the
kind
moisture.
of like tell what's happening, even though you can't see it. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool to experience. Or you see like different times of day, like when the dew sets, when it comes in, like it's just like you can kind of start feeling like the weather changes, which is like, wow, that's pretty cool.
I love that. I love it when you're out away from civilization long enough to where you can start to get in tune with what's happening and again make that connection and be like, man, what would it be like if there wasn't light pollution and we had to rely on these senses that I'm experiencing right now all the time? They would just get heightened and better. And but those are neat. I really, that's one thing I enjoy, is finding that connection in nature. And
it's really cool.
Other senses start to perk up. All right, an easy one. Actually, on my notes it says a hard one. What's been your I did it backwards. Okay. Yeah, in the cycling realm, what has been your biggest accomplishment?
Let me think. My biggest accomplishment. I mean, the best project I was a part of was making the Baja Divide route.
Okay.
Down the Baja Peninsula in Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
That was definitely like the kind of the biggest contribution, really, as far as like making riding accessible and available to others, and like sending people out for this adventure ride on a stellar route, getting people excited about that, and then the on the ground work of making this route. So the Baja Divide's 1,700 miles down the Baja Peninsula, probably 95% dirt. And it just crosses all the major ranges down the peninsula, mountain ranges. So I went out with my ex-boyfriend to scout this. We took like maybe up to 6 months on bikes, making all these connections. A lot of dead ends, like a lot of like not finding connecting route. And so it was a huge project just to get this route out, then make a website, publish it, organize like a group start where 100 people met in San Diego to ride together. And then I also did a women's scholarship where I gave away a bike packing bags, like a tent, all this stuff, like all these things, just as basically like, okay, people, here you go. Just go for it.
Yeah.
It's there, it's free, it's available. That was huge. It was a ton of work. And also like doing things at that point that I'm not that good at, like organizing people, bringing them together. I mean, this like actually really stressed me out, but it was really cool. I'm much more like solo. It's like for me, I like just being out and riding often by myself. So like thinking more in a group mentality, that was big. That was hard for me. I also did, the racing's great. The accomplishments are like solid. That I won the Trans Am was huge. But then it's like, well, it's just a race. 2 years ago, I did a project where I rode all of the roads in Alaska.
Right.
That was probably the most fun I've ever had. It's like, it was so unpredictable. I'd go out for like a week, 2 weeks, like, basically set, like, I'm going to ride to the Arctic slope, and then just do that, but have no plan along the way.
Were you base camping out of your house there and just riding?
Yeah, so I'd go out and then come back to work. So I was like funding all of this by working at a bike shop.
Yeah.
And they were super cool about it. They were like, just come to work whenever you're in town. You like come to work whenever you're in town. When you leave, that's totally fine. Just clock out and there you go.
Man, what a wonderful attitude to have, that they would allow you to do that.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe that. I've never had that flexibility.
Yeah.
So that was so cool. And then I was like seeing my home state, places I'd only ever heard of, never seen. And then I was also like, well, I don't have to ride both directions. So I'd ride one way and then immediately start trying to hitch back. I like got to Dead Horse, like the farthest north you can go. And then I'm like in this cafeteria, because that's the only food they have. And I'm like walking table to table asking, is anybody driving back to Anchorage? I hitch a ride with this like huge semi truck.
You're like all kitted out with your bike and everything.
And I'm so dirty and I haven't slept in like a day.
Did anyone think you were a homeless lady? Like,
no, because it's like, how would you end up there?
Okay.
It's so far out.
It's so out there.
Yeah. It's like there aren't any resources for the last 200 miles.
Oh, wow.
Like zero.
Yeah. Man, I like what you said about just giving something back. I feel like
Oh, yeah.
I don't feel like that was a major reason why I started a podcast, simply because I feel like I've been the benefactor of people like you and people who have developed routes or YouTube videos on gear, whatever it is. Like, there's so many people who have contributed so much to this community that I love. I wanted to do something, and so this is kind of just my contribution
Super
back
cool.
to the bikepacking community, like
That's
in
so
whatever
cool.
small way I can.
And I feel like that's like kind of the community in general. People are creating these like resources for others for really just the fact of getting them out.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like you're not getting any money for this. You're not getting any fame for this.
I'm definitely
you're
not.
just doing it, and it's like you're just doing it to have it out there.
Yeah.
Building routes just so they're there.
Right.
Because they're places you love and you want other people to come experience
That's
them.
exactly what it is. Yeah.
It's amazing,
That's
and
exactly
it's
what
like,
it is.
and then I find somebody that's made a great route, and I'm just so grateful because it's so gorgeous, and it's like I never would have made those connections. Like the Swiss route, incredible, and I never would have found that.
Right.
I never would have gone to Switzerland.
Right.
So
That's
just
exactly
like
it. Yeah.
solid routes. It's like what a gift.
Yeah, all of that. I feel a huge debt of gratitude to everyone who's done something, and so yeah, it's nice to give back to the community a little bit
Yeah, super cool.
any little way. And obviously, the Baja was a huge contribution. So off the bike, what has been your greatest accomplishment?
Off
That's
the bike.
the hard
Oh,
that's the hard
boy,
one.
That's the hard one. I have no idea. I mean, I've been like so kind of set on the bike for like, over a decade that I'm like, what do I have to do when I'm not on the bike?
What about personally, like in a way that maybe you've grown personally, even through riding a bike, but it's like helped you become a better person or have a greater perspective or appreciation? Or
I mean, it's like now, this is still bike related, but it's like I organize a girls program. So that doesn't really feel like too much biking for me because it's like we ride like 10 miles.
Right.
And so that's, I guess like off the bike would be, these efforts to like kind of build community or make like, make scholarships or make girls programs. It's like, that's harder work for me to do, but it's like, I believe in it so hard that I'm like, I'm just going to make it happen.
Yeah.
And that's kind of cool too, because it's like, I'm not the best person to be doing this. People are great at organizing. They have like a mind for it. They have like a method, and I'm like such a scramble. I have like a paper list, and that's it.
I feel the same way about podcasting.
Yeah.
I feel like there's so many better people that could do it, but I think the important thing is that you're doing it.
You just do it anyway, because you're like, well, if I don't do it, nobody else is going to do it, so I might as well just do it.
Yeah, you might as well. Let's talk about your women's. Is that Grit, right?
Yeah,
Anchorage
Grit.
Yeah,
So,
let's talk about that.
Oh, it's so good. It's Grit stands for Girls Riding into Tomorrow, and I organized this with Kate Rodriguez. She also lives in Anchorage. We kind of came up with the idea while we were doing this group ride on the Baja Divide, and then we were like, hey, let's make a mentorship program for girls. So we kind of nailed in to 12 and 13-year-old girls. They're in 7th grade, and then we had to just. Our initial idea was like, we'll take them at the end on basically a bikepacking trip. So I set this idea like we're going to ride from Anchorage, the city, out to Eklutna Lake, ride along a trail at the end of the lake to a Forest Service cabin. It's like basically city to wilderness.
Yeah.
Like the cabin backs up to a glacier. It's just
Oh, wow.
exceptional. It's so cool. 60 miles, I think, was the total trip. And then we're like, okay, how do we set it up to prepare these girls for the ride? That was one. Another was like, what girls do we want to work with? And then we have to get involved with the schools to find girls for this. And then we wanted to have like at least one mentor, like adult woman to every 2 girls. So we have to recruit people to help us with this. So we kind of designed this whole program where we got bikes from Specialized, bags from Revelate, got all this donation equipment, and then started meeting the girls after school 2 days a week, and then on Saturdays for longer rides to build up to this final weekend trip that's 3 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what was the experience of at what age were these young ladies?
12 and 13.
12 and 13. So what kind of experience did they have in cycling or the outdoors going
Zero.
into? Yeah.
I mean, the first year we worked with 2 different schools. So one is a low-income school kind of on the east side of town, and then another is an optional program. So we found girls at the optional school, like their parents had taken them backpacking or they had been out. the girls from the east side of town like had never, like many of them have never even seen like the water, the coast in Anchorage.
Whoa.
It's like, this is your city, and you haven't been like 10 miles across town to see like the coast, you know. And they're like, wow, that leads to the ocean, you know. It's like that to me. I was like, oh my
man,
gosh.
yeah.
Like,
so what was that like, seeing that, like giving those girls that gift or that opportunity? It was
such a surprise. But then it's also so cool because it's like they haven't ridden and they're so squirrely when they start. They're just like shaking on their bikes, and then like 2 weeks later they're fine.
Yeah.
And then they're like building up their mileage. At the end they're riding like, you know, 25 miles a day with all this climbing, and it's hard, but they do it.
Right.
Then they come back like the next year and they ride with us as like student mentors, some of them. And they're at like the girls that were in the back are now leading the whole group.
Beautiful.
And you're like, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Like how they can improve and develop. It's like, for me to see that, just to see it over 6 weeks, I'm like, oh my gosh, they can just do it.
Yeah.
And then you think about like, anybody could do this.
Right. Anyone can.
Like if they just kind of commit to like, it's going to be hard, and then stick with it even for like 2 months. And then you're like, okay, you're doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I had a very similar experience recently where there's a professor at Texas Tech University, Jared Foster.
Yeah.
You know him?
No, but some of his students came out to interview me
Oh, cool.
in Arizona.
Oh, wow. Which ones do you remember?
It was, I think her name's Anna Claire.
Anna Claire, yes.
Yeah, you know her.
Yeah, she was on the trip with me, and I interviewed her for the podcast.
Oh,
and
right
we're gonna be doing some more stuff. She's trying to get a women's mountain bike festival kicked off here in this area. So, yeah, awesome.
She came over. She was like, because they have to do a final like media project, I think a video. So they had done this route in New Mexico, and I was living in southern Arizona at the time, so they drove over from New Mexico.
Wow.
And I was doing this Mount Lemmon challenge where I was riding Mount Lemmon every day for a week, and so they just came up to like mile 6.
Oh, nice.
And then we did like an interview, and
yeah, what a small world. Yeah, Anna Claire's great. I love her.
I mean, I think she just wrote me on like Instagram.
Yeah.
She was like, hey, I'm doing this project, could I come meet you?
And she's a badass. She's self-taught on cycling and the outdoors and everything, and just fell in love with it and taught herself, how to be a badass.
Yeah, and a great photographer too.
Oh yeah, she's a wonderful
photographer. Which is
photographer.
really cool.
Yeah. So my experience was going with her. She went as a trip leader this time, but this program that he has, he takes 16 students, college students, into some remote areas. And this past spring we went to Big Bend Ranch State Park, which is like the most remote, rugged part of Texas you can get to. And some of these students had never been, like 3 of them had never been camping before. One of them learned how to ride a bike legitimately for this course. I said crash because she crashed 44 times on that trip.
Holy cow.
Like one of the girls endoed, bit through her lip, and she was like
really bad,
squirting water through her lip, but they're all smiles, and they kept going, and they all
amazing to see.
Did it.
Yeah.
And the amazing part was watching people who had never been camping before, never ridden their bike before, like with very, very limited experience, go out into super remote areas and just like kill it, and not only kill it, but man, some of them, I mean, I saw lots of tears of joy just in all the
so
beauty.
Inspired. Yeah.
Right.
That's so cool.
That was like the coolest thing for me to see is and also like you just don't need all the coolest gear, you can just go out and like enjoy it, and
I mean, they came to ride with me up Lemon. They had like steel hardtail Konas, I think, or something like that. The school actually had like a fleet of bikes for this.
Whoa.
Something like that. I think they were borrowed bikes or...
Well, that's awesome.
That's so cool. I mean, and then it just makes me want to be out there like doing that with them because I want to see how this goes off,
Absolutely.
And their teacher wrote me, but I haven't. He was like, oh, thank you so much for meeting with my students. So kind.
Yeah.
I was like, no big deal. They came and found me on a mountain.
Oh, Jared?
Yeah.
Yeah, Jared's real nice. He's doing a lot of really neat things for the community, giving back in the same way you are. You're helping with the younger girls, and he's taking them in college. And, I mean... There's only 2 college programs that I'm aware of that take students bike packing.
Yeah, there's also the one in Arizona. Kurt Refsnyder's school, Prescott.
Yeah, because he does the geology.
Totally, and that's
which is
just
a great way to like my wife is a geologist also, so like we travel around, and I mean, you have plenty of time to look at the geology when you're on a bike, whether it's the little rocks in front of your tire or the big cliffs or whatever it is. You know, you can appreciate all of it.
Yeah, what a cool way to see it. Have you had him on the show too?
I haven't.
I think Kurt is like probably the most, like doing the most for bike packing right now of anybody.
Wow.
I really do. It's like this bike packing routes he's putting together, like kind of establishing routes through either like Navajo land, and just all the connections he's making and also just killing it as a racer. And I mean, I'm just blown away with what this guy's doing.
Yeah, he's taken on a lot.
I don't feel like he's getting enough credit for it.
Well, I'll give him some credit.
Yeah.
We'll give him some credit right now. I definitely want to interview him. I know Jared Foster is friends with him as well, and like I said, I only try to do in-person interviews, so it's very much of a product is whenever someone's in my vicinity, like with you. I don't even think I mentioned that, but this is not like a planned interview. I messaged you on Instagram yesterday, and you were gracious enough to carve out like a little bit of time to sit down, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course.
You're like a real person.
Yeah.
Who would have thought? All right. What's it like to be the best in the world?
Oh, man, you know, it's like you say that, but then I'm like, well, am I the best? And I really want to be. So I'm like, then I just have to keep kind of going harder, because I'm like, it's not good enough just to set the record, because I also want to beat the men's records.
Right.
And then I haven't. You know, so then I'm like, well, I still have that out there, so I'm not the best. Like the Tour Divide, for instance, I'm racing again this summer, and I don't think I'm going to get it this year because there's so much snow, but I really want to beat that record.
In
overall.
17, did you have the overall record? Or
2015, I raced it. No, I have. So the women's record then was 19 days, 2 hours, and I took it down to 15 days, 10 hours.
Okay, so Wikipedia said in 17 you beat the men's record. That's not true?
Not true.
Okay, we're going to put that out there right now.
Wikipedia is so bad. It's like point to point, like every single thing is wrong. But it's like, what are you going to edit your own Wikipedia page?
Yeah, we need to.
That's
all right,
bad.
We're gonna get some people to edit that and make it all
real.
accurate.
I'm like, this stuff is all. My mom read it and she's like, this is totally wrong.
This isn't right. You didn't do any of this stuff.
I just don't look at it, you know. But then somebody calls me for like a magazine interview and they're like, yeah, so Wikipedia says all this stuff, and I'm like, that's all wrong. Yeah,
that's so. I've like just growing up in life, like I grew up as a skateboarder, and then like later on I played tennis, and I've always been competitive, and I'm like, man, what would it be like to be the best skateboarder in the entire world, you know, or whatever. But I don't know if I'll ever talk to anybody else that is like, you're legitimately the best female ultra endurance cyclist.
Yeah, but I kind of shrug with that too, because I'm like, well, like the Arizona Trail, Kate Boyle has the record for that, so she's the best. Right. She also has she's a 24-hour world champion, so it's like, I'm not that.
Yeah.
You know, there's Sarah Cooper that won the race across the West. It's like 1,000 miles. Overall, she won. Beat the men and everything, and I'm like, well, she's best at that. Like, currently I'm the best in the Tour Divide and the Trans Am.
Okay.
So I'm like, okay, I'll take those. And then it's like, well, I want to get better at those other categories too.
Right,
you know?
right.
I'm like... And then I'm like, I'm not just, you know, sometimes people make like a big deal of like beating some records, but I'm like, God, you just have to smash them to really do something significant, you know?
Yeah.
Like, and then there are some races I'm like, I want to go get that race.
What's one you want to go get?
Arizona Trail 750 for sure. I wanted to ride it this year, but there was too much snow.
Yeah, I was about to ask, because I know that was kind of on your bucket list for this year.
I'm just like itching for it. Man, I got to get back out there also, because like I had unsettled business with that. You know, it's like I got so sick I had to get off the route. That was 2015, and now I'm like, I'm ready to get back on it.
Cool.
But yeah.
So I wanted to talk to you. You mentioned being sick. One thing that like I've noticed is it seems like you struggle with respiratory problems. Yeah, like it's insane that you're accomplishing all the things that we're talking about, and at the same time you're fighting with your body.
Oh yeah, I mean, and that's like, I think I have pretty bad asthma. You know, which is like, it's just kind of sad.
You think? You haven't been to a doctor?
No.
What?
But if I use an inhaler, I'm much better off. But I still like cough like a smoker, you know, and like just like sound like somebody who smokes like 2 packs of cigarettes a day.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of sad. I don't actually care that much. I'm just like, oh, this is limiting. Everybody has their thing. Some
Right.
people like can't seem to eat food and can't like digest it. Some people have knee problems or back problems, or everybody has like kind of their thing, and like breathing is definitely mine.
So how do you deal with it? I mean, is it? I mean, you're physically struggling to take in air. It's like blocking your airways.
Yeah, I mean, so now what I'll do is, at least for like the first 2 days of the race, I'll dose an inhaler. So I'll take like 2 puffs of an albuterol inhaler every 4 hours. And then once I get past like the 2-day mark, usually I'm like, I think my body's over the shock and I don't have to keep taking it. But if I don't do that, then I'll just go into like full physical breakdown.
Yeah.
Like during my first attempt on the Tour Divide, it was like for a week it was like breathing through like a little coffee straw. It was so miserable. It was like, oh man, like these just tiny little gasps of air. And then like my mind would be totally there, but my legs, like, they couldn't move. It was like moving in slow motion because I couldn't get enough air in. It's like, this is so messed up.
So how do you push through that? Like, I mean, how do you, that's a rough moment.
That was
if
one
your
of the
legs
worst.
aren't moving. Yeah. Like what do you do to keep pushing?
For that, I was like, I would just try to get to the top of the pass, and then I'm like, okay, after that it's going to be downhill for like an hour.
Right.
And then I would just, I was like, all right, I just have to get to the top, and then I'll descend.
So just little goals.
Yeah, little goals. And then, at that time too, it was super frustrating because it was like I would basically just shut down by like 9 p.m. Like in the morning, I would like cough up all this kind of gunk, and then I'd be okay. And then over the day it would just get worse and worse to where I was like not even moving. And then I was like, okay, I'm just going to wake up again tomorrow and see. And I did this for about a week.
Wow.
And then I rode myself to the emergency room, got treatment, and then I got way better. But I think that also is because it was like my first long race. I'd ridden all the way down from Anchorage to the start.
That's right, yeah.
So I was like, God, I did this huge ride just to get here. And now I don't want to quit. I really didn't want to quit. So I was like, I'm just going to stick with it. And I just did that day after day until I got help. And then I got way better.
Man, that's crazy.
It
But
was,
the perseverance to just keep going is very respectful.
I just really didn't want to quit.
Yeah. You worked so hard to get there again.
Yeah,
You just
and I
didn't
was
want to
like,
let it go.
But then I was getting to the breaking point where I was like, I think I probably have to. Because when I went to the emergency room, they took an x-ray of my lungs to make sure I didn't have pneumonia. Because I was like, my symptoms were so bad that they thought I might have pneumonia, and that's like your lungs are filling up with fluid.
Yeah.
But I didn't. I just had like super cloudy lungs. So they're like, well,
borderline.
We don't recommend that you keep going, but just
it's probably
it's
going to be okay.
not going to kill you.
You probably won't die.
It was like lungs of like a 70-year-old.
Oh,
just
nice.
like really bad.
So you have a thing about riding to the start of a race. I think for
I love to.
2018, or you're doing that again. I read.
I'm riding to start of the Dirty Kansas.
Oh, the DK. Okay.
Yeah. So.
And that's you're going to do the XL.
XL. Yeah.
Okay.
So I wasn't planning on doing this race. My goal was Tour Divide, and then I was like, oh, I'll ride to the start of the Tour Divide again, but from Colorado. But there's been so much snow that I'm like, I can't even really ride passes to get there right now because it's too snowy.
Yeah.
So I was like, the folks from Dirty Kansas asked me if I'd come race, and initially they thought the 200, and I was like, well, I'm only interested if I can race the XL, because 200 is just like, it's not a great race for me.
Yeah.
It's like I don't think I'd be that competitive. It's more like a road race.
You feel like you need to warm up more?
I just feel like over the distance, like that's where, and self-supported, that's like more towards my strengths.
Right. Makes more sense. That's where you fit in.
Yeah. So then I was like, okay, I'm going to race the DKXL. And then I was like, well, I could do a ride to the start of that. I'll start in Louisville near Boulder, Colorado. And I think it's like 650 miles to get to
a nice little warm up.
Yeah. And there's actually another guy. I haven't even met him. We've just been talking, and his name's Dylan Morton. He's also racing it. And then he's like, well, if you're interested, I'll help you out with like a better route, and maybe we could ride together. So I'm like basically just going to show up in Boulder and then meet this guy, and then he put together like a pretty nice route, and we'll just go ride it.
Awesome.
So like that's kind of cool.
Do you own a car yet?
No, I still don't drive.
Still don't drive.
But Rue has a car, and she'll be like following along, documenting the ride to the start, and
So you have an emergency vehicle just in case.
Yeah, and also just so she could be there. And then I'm actually the keynote speaker at like the women's forum, so for Dirty Kansas. So we'll show this video of riding to the race. And then the whole idea is just like the places you can ride, you know, and kind of like, because since I've been doing this ride to the start or these long distance, more people are like, hey, I could do that. And then they like map something out from their house to like the start of another race. It's just like, it's cool to see like that kind of light bulb of like, hey, I could do that. And then people getting excited about it, you know. Adventure riding just doesn't have to be the best route. It gets you where you're going.
Right. You know? Another guest that I had on the show, Tom Hughes, he doesn't own a car, and he rides to the start of events. He just did one in College Station, Texas, the same one I did, and he rode, I don't remember, I'm not going to lie about the miles, but he rode a ways to get to where someone could pick him up, and then they drove down together. But he doesn't own a car, so he just like has to ride to where someone can give him a ride there, or ride at the start of the race, or whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you start thinking about the other ways you can go. You know, it's like in Alaska I take ferries, or like in Europe I'll take trains. You know, and it's like connecting these different methods is like part of the fun too, because then you start getting creative about travel in general.
Is that one thing you and Rue are trying to do, is like kind of shed some light on, I don't know, I mean, you mentioned that you were going to be filming your journey to get to the Dirty Kansas. Is that intentional to just show like, look, make up a route, go ride your bike?
Yeah, it's part of a bigger, so we're doing a media project about the Tour Divide race this year, mostly funded by Pearl Izumi and Revelade and Wahoo. And so they're like basically paying to share the story of like, and then we've broken it down so there will be at least 3 videos. One will be like preparation for the race, so that's basically like riding to Dirty Kansas. Another will be all about the gear I'm using for the Tour Divide, and then like a final short one, just a recap of how the race goes, and then we'll do more of like a 20-minute film festival video about the race. Like,
that's
and
great.
That'll be released, I think, in October.
Oh man, exciting!
Yeah, there's a bikepacking summit is in Georgia this year. You should go.
Okay.
We're gonna do the premiere of the video there.
When is it?
I think it's October 4th or.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll
check it out.
Yeah.
Should be cool.
I'll consider that an invitation. I'm coming.
Yeah, absolutely. You should go. I've never been to Georgia either. So
I haven't either.
And I can't remember, something Mulberry Gap or something like that. It's like a really cool little like trail center.
Okay.
And the folks that are like hosting are like their moms like cooking all the meals. And it's like very like southern.
Very southern, yeah. I love it.
So I think that'll be cool.
Yeah.
You know, the past 2 years have been in Colorado, so it's kind of cool to like take it somewhere else.
Yeah. Are you starting to get used to people filming you all the time and wanting it, you know, to have interviews with you and all that?
Yeah, it's not like all the time,
Uh-huh.
you know, but it's more common, I guess. I mean, it's so cool now the way people connect with you is they just like write. It's same with like media and sponsors. They'll just like send me an Instagram message or like even like the State Department. Yeah. I'm like, what the heck? Like they asked, because I was supposed to race in Kyrgyzstan last year, and they're like, hey, will you be a sports envoy for the State Department?
Wow.
To Kyrgyzstan.
I don't even know what that is, but that's cool.
It's like basically like they've never had a cyclist. So in the past it's been like former Olympians. Like we'll go and like visit different schools in the country they're going to, and like basically just spend time with the kids, being inspiring. And I'm like, that sounds so cool. But I'm like, I'm getting an Instagram message about this. Like that seems like official, you know.
Yeah.
But it's like the method of communication now is just different.
Yeah, it is. I guess our world is shrinking in that way.
Like you can just get in touch with people like immediately.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to have a contact really. You just write whoever.
Yeah, usually through Instagram.
Yeah.
That's like how I make almost all my connections.
Facebook messages.
Yeah.
Like sometimes people will find my email, but that's even that's becoming more rare.
Yeah.
Which is like that's so weird.
I know. I get an email. I get emails too, and I'm just like, oh, email. Okay.
Yeah.
I try to check that too. Well, all right. So I wanted to close by, like, I'm married to my wife. Mm-hmm. And I have a 9-year-old daughter and a 2-year-old daughter.
That's cute.
And we are a family of riders. My 2-year-old, she's a Stridon, and we just got her first pedal bike. So I'm excited to try to teach her how to ride like before the age of 3 is my goal. I want her,
gosh, that's
I want her tearing it
awesome.
up. But yeah, so like, what is some advice to any women out there that are not just to my family, but just to women in general that you like to spread, any message
Yeah.
to women?
I mean, I guess I would say, it's like I've faced like people. If you're a woman and you're riding alone or you're kind of taking on these long distances, you get kind of weird. Sometimes, most of the time, it's like people are really inspired and excited, but occasionally you'll get kind of this weird response where people will tell you it's not possible or that it's too dangerous. But I mean, you kind of have to look at that and think it's not really about you; it's about them. Like they're afraid, and that's why they're telling you that,
Right.
like kind of disparaging comments, and then just to like realize it's weird and then forget about it, and go do your thing anyway. Because
Yeah.
it's like people can tell you what you can and cannot do, and then you can just go do it. And then once you do it, then it might actually change their mind too.
Right.
But I even had that before, like I was doing these long rides that weren't races, and then I'd have like a reaction from some men telling me I was lying, that I actually hadn't done it.
Oh,
And I
wow.
was like, that's so weird. And that was part of what kind of triggered me to race too, because I was like, well, if I'm in a race and I get the result, then it's like concrete that I actually did it.
Right. There's proof. There's a
I'm
track
not,
leader.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm not like making it up or like.
Oh, it's so
So
sad that you
weird.
have to do that.
I know, but it's also like I like doing it anyway. But I was
But
like,
and it's good.
that's so weird. Like, where is that coming from?
Yeah. Well, we need to break that down. That's why I wanted to
I think
ask you
so.
that question, and
Yeah.
that's why you're such an inspiration to so many people because, like,
Just go do it.
Yeah.
Don't let other people like dictate what you can do.
yeah.
You can just go do it, and you don't have to like only compete against women. You compete against the field. And I've heard that a lot too. It's like, well, you won the women's category, and it's like, well, that's not all I'm aiming to do. I want to win the whole thing,
Yeah.
and like I think that kind of opens it up. I think especially because you can in endurance. I don't know about shorter form races. I
Right.
don't compete there, but in endurance you absolutely can.
I think
compete.
I wouldn't be surprised if women have an advantage in endurance in some ways.
I've heard that too,
Yeah.
and it's like
They're so much tougher than guys are.
they're
Like,
just like waiting for evidence, like people are
Right.
waiting for evidence to see that this actually can happen. So it's like
Exactly.
if you do it, then they're like, oh, see, it happened.
how often does that happen when someone breaks like a marathon record? Like no one will ever, I don't even know what it is, like under 3 hours, I think is what they're going for right now. Like no one can do it, and then somebody does it, and then like there's 10 people after them
That do it.
that do
Yeah,
it.
exactly. It's like this mental thing of
Yeah.
like nobody believes it can happen until it
Right.
does, and then once that record comes down, then it's gonna get hit again, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean the other thing is like with bike packing races, there just aren't that many women competing. Like I show up to a race and it's like 180 people, 20 maybe 20 are women. Like probably not, probably more like 10.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, there just aren't that many competing. So it's like, well, and I also think women don't even realize this is like a sport. And then once they hear about it, they're like, oh, I could do that. I see a lot more like women getting into it that are just like, yeah, no big deal. So it's just cool.
Well, no, that's good. I mean, we need. I'm so grateful that you came on the show because we need people like you. We need women. We need Anna Claire, who's trying to do neat things, and
Yeah, for
I'm going to
sure.
be talking to Jan Bennett later, who you know.
Yeah,
and
totally. Very cool.
But we need those people to like break down those barriers so that people know that it's possible.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm just excited to be doing it because
Heck yeah.
I want to.
Yeah.
It's
Oh, there's that too.
I want to go do this. I want to go do this weird thing where it's like I don't sleep. I eat just total
Yeah.
junk food. But I just want to be out riding.
Yeah.
That's what keeps me going is that I actually love the riding.
Well, is there anything we didn't talk about?
I think we covered
I'm sure
it.
there's a lot we didn't talk about, but I appreciate you coming, letting me come and talk to you. Time is super valuable, and for you to carve out a little bit of time to share a little bit of your story, I appreciate
yeah.
it. And I think after this, I'm going to retire because I don't know
No way.
who else
so
am I going to
good.
interview. No, I'm kidding, but I do appreciate it, and yeah, enjoy talking to you.
Yeah, for sure. You too.
All right. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in. And thanks again to Lael for sitting down and talking with me. I really enjoyed that, and I hope all y'all did as well. Lael is currently riding her bike to the start of the DK XL. So that kicks off on June 1st. And if you want to keep up with her ride as she rides 650 miles to DKXL, you can head over to Instagram. There's a link there in her profile to her tracking, and you can just keep up with her adventure as she heads towards the race and rides. It's so funny. She's riding almost double the length of the race just to get to the race. So I love that. And then obviously watch how she does at the DKXL. It should be a really good race this year. It's a good field. So good luck, Lael, and everybody out there who's participating in the DK, whether that's the 200 or the 350. What a great event. So good luck to all the participants. All right. So the project that I had in mind, you heard on the episode when we were talking about the Wikipedia and how it was completely crap, and even her mom was giving her shit about it. So what I'd like to do is, if I could get one or two or three, I don't know how many people. I've never edited a Wikipedia page before, but if you kind of know how to do that and want to give a little bit of a gift to Lael, like she said, she can't edit her own Wikipedia. It just wouldn't be right. So I thought it'd be neat, something nice we could do for her, to just get a little group together, edit the Wikipedia, make it right, make it current, and then send her a link. So if you could either reach out to me on Instagram or send me an email, bikes@bikesorddeath.com, and I'll kind of coordinate it, and I'll put together a little group, and we'll make that happen. I think that'd be cool. So, all right. You know what to do now. Head over to Patreon. If you want to support the show, if you like this type of content, your contributions are greatly appreciated. And also leave a review on iTunes. That helps other people find the show, helps grow it, and that's what we're here to do. We're trying to make bike packing and adventuring and the outdoors more accessible to more people. And the more people that hear it, the better I'll be able to have an impact in that way, which is something I definitely want to do. All right. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Now you know what to do. Go ride your damn bike.